This podcast explores the lack of engagement from progressive left spaces on men's issues and the challenges faced by men and boys. George noticed a lack of engagement from left-leaning spaces on men and boys' advocacy, which led him to research and discover shocking data on men's issues such as suicide, domestic violence, violent crime, homelessness, and drug addiction. The left tends to blame men for their own issues and places the blame on toxic masculinity and patriarchy. George argues that men and boys deserve a conversation in their own right, not just for the benefit of women and girls. The intersectionality of men's issues is discussed, particularly when it comes to race and sexuality. George points out that black men are disproportionately affected by issues such as police brutality, and the left often fails to acknowledge the gender aspect of these issues. George shares his experiences of losing friends and acquaintances who were unwilling to engage in conversations about men's issues. He believes that addressing male suicide requires going deeper and addressing issues such as domestic violence against men and discriminatory practices in family courts. The podcast highlights the sentencing bias against men in criminal courts and the lack of awareness and discussion around these issues. The left's focus on political correctness and avoidance of controversial topics is seen as preventing progress in solving the problems that affect men. George argues that the left needs to acknowledge and address the structural disadvantages faced by men in order to effectively solve the problems that are hurting men and their potential partners. Men's issues should not be dismissed or blamed on toxic masculinity, but rather seen as societal issues that require collective action and support. In conclusion, the podcast raises important questions about the lack of attention given to men's issues by the left and advocates for a more comprehensive and empathetic approach. It calls for a shift in attitudes and a willingness to listen and address the concerns of men in order to create a more equitable society for all genders. George's work as TheTinMen on Instagram serves as a platform for research and development, with the goal of eventually creating a documentary that explores these issues in depth.